So here's the story, and I actually have a tough time telling this story. It means a lot to me, and I think one of the reasons is because I was with my son when it went down, but also because after I told my mom the story, my mom never does anything on Facebook. I put the story up on Facebook after I experienced it, and my mother liked the story and said, "If not for the grace of God, there go I." I was riding with my son Justin on an A train towards Brooklyn some months back while on vacation in Manhattan. About 10 minutes into the 30-minute ride, it became obvious that something was amiss. Though I was immersed in the project of assisting my son with transferring data from his new iPhone, my old phone, to my iPad, I was still checking everything out. After all, one of the first rules of engagement I learned in the hood was that while many black folk in America share in the lack of certain privileges, all black folk lack the privilege of being clueless. We cannot afford the luxury of not being aware of our surroundings. Consequently, people were all of a sudden anxiously moving, stealthily whispering, and yet, interestingly enough, many of them were also smirking, chuckling, or even laughing. It all of a sudden had me wondering what could contribute to so many strangers all being on the same page. After all, it is New York City. Eventually I discovered, though, it was a very tall woman who looked disoriented, perhaps under the influence of drugs, perhaps with some form of mental disability, perhaps both. I noticed her as a person under scrutiny, more so when all eyes followed her as she left her seat and walked down past my son and I. It took a moment beyond recognizing her as what W.B. Du Bois articulated as a problem for most around her to discover why. When she passed by us, I felt her move but wasn't looking at her. 5 to 10 seconds after she passed, I detected a very offensive odor. I couldn't attribute it to any one specific person at the time. However, about 30 seconds later, I noticed her once again gathering herself for a move. This time I was more attentive to her movement, and as a result realized that the disarming stench I had smelled earlier was coming from her. Then I noticed what appeared to be some type of large brown stain upon the back of her dress. At this point, I realized what all the earlier commotion had been about. Sitting next to her would have been torturous, to say the least. More than a minute had passed, and yet the scent was lingering powerfully enough to make you nauseous. Remembering the range of reactions people were giving her, I turned to my son Justin and said, "Please don't let anyone know that at this moment you and I are discussing her by the way you're responding to me. And more so, please don't contribute to embarrassing her any further." He nodded his head in support. It was immediately after that when I noticed a family of 4, a woman who I imagined was the mother, a man who I imagined was the father, and then their 2 children all huddled together in their seats. The woman holding the boy was laughing and whispering something in the boy's ear which had him smiling, smirking, and chuckling. Often she glanced towards the man, their eyes simultaneously gravitating towards the tall woman, then back towards one another with something that felt like a shared wink and a smile. This same woman with boy had earlier been searching for eye contact from me when our seating area of passengers all experienced her scent. I chose then to not nurture what I surmised as her insensitivity. But now I had no choice because the combination of watching people laughing at this woman, whom they knew nothing about, combined with modeling behavior my son would benefit from had me finding myself trying to figure out the best course of action. It was then that I fully realized I needed to make a statement to more people. Than just the smiling woman with a child. Having not actually heard her speak, I said, "Excuse me, miss, but do you speak English?" I asked in a voice loud enough to reach others without my message reaching the tall woman. "Yes, I do," she said. "Good. Then I must say that I hope you or anyone else who may be apt to laugh at an unfortunate person must know that the person they are laughing at would prefer to be immersed in a different reality. I doubt very seriously if her reality today is by choice." The woman, surprised to say the least, muttered that she wasn't laughing, but completely lost any semblance of a smile thereafter. After I said that, I felt my anger dissipate, and perhaps imagined respect emanating from others on the train. My son shook his head in momentary light disbelief, recognizing quickly that he shouldn't have been surprised. This is how his dad, more often than not, rolls. He then smiled approvingly. Later at my hotel room, I shared this story with some of my visiting students, Angel Acosta, Edmund Achapong, and a few others, and in the middle of telling them the story, I again became so overwhelmed with emotion that it was very difficult to hold back the tears. As I was on my train ride homeward, I could barely see my keystrokes from the deluge of tears welling up in my eyes as I attempted to write and ultimately share this with you. Why? Because I don't understand how we can laugh at each other's pain. Be entertained by each other's struggle. That woman is and was someone's daughter, perhaps sister, mother, lover, cousin, niece, friend. She is a sentient human being. I then realized that my tears were not just for her, but for the human condition. We are far too often inconsiderate cowards when we need to be considerate leaders and allies. Every one of you hearing this should be asking yourself, what would you have done in the same situation? If you are unsure, ask yourself, how many of you would really appreciate someone riding to your rescue? My tears were probably also related to all the times I could have and should have said something and didn't. Shame on me for at least some of those times, knowing that different contexts sometimes dictate different realities. My tears may also have been for my actions, which could possibly be construed as bullying by some. I deeply regret that we live in a world where I even feel the need to have to challenge someone like this. And lastly, perhaps my tears are symbolic of the hope of creating a world of allies who will help the woman deemed a problem find help, while consistently challenging others to be more considerate of others' realities. As we step into our leadership moments, it is paramount that everyone gets in the game. Dr. King was like a coach for us. We're the players. We're the athletes. It's time for us to take the field. My last quote that I end with is Dr. King having said, "We may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now." Thank you.